Two signs of panic today as Anthony Albanese suddenly goes, uh-oh, the economy, and uh-oh, Pauline Hanson. She's not just a problem for the Liberals, it turns out. Look, the Albanese government is still way ahead of the Liberals in the polls, so you'd think, what's the Prime Minister's problem? In fact, the future suddenly looks very troubled for the country and for Albanese. Now, for us, the pain, of course, is today's inflation figures. Steady at 3.8%, but higher than expected, or is healthy, with underlying inflation actually rising. And this is, of course, bad news for us and poison for the Prime Minister. And not just because Australians are getting poorer, prices rising more than wages. And not just because this inflation figure makes it even likelier that the Reserve Bank will now raise interest rates to control it. And for a second time this year, raise them in May. But when you look at what sent up what actually did go up the prices, besides food, 3.1% for the year, that, you see very clear evidence that government policies are now really hurting Australians. Housing was already almost unaffordable for the young and the poor in our cities, but now prices over the year up again by 6.8%. Why is this government then even now importing hundreds of thousands of immigrants a year, all of them competing with Australians for homes and apartments? And the other and even bigger rise, electricity. Up for the year by, and get this, nearly 32%. Again, why is the Albanese government spending hundreds of billions of dollars on green schemes that make no measurable difference to the climate, but do help make electricity too expensive and unreliable for the poor and for business? These are direct failures of government. And so is the overall rise in inflation. That inflation has been blamed by almost every expert I've heard on the government just spending too much in the biggest spend-a-thon in federal politics in the past 40 years outside the pandemic years. Economists, business, bankers, Peter Costello, our longest-serving treasurer, all blame the government for spending too much. Even a Labor giant, former ACTU Secretary Bill Kelty, this week warned there was too much spending and workers were getting poorer. Now, Treasurer Jim Chalmers, he's kept saying, no, all those experts were wrong to blame his spending.
There's not a unanimous view amongst the economists about what's driving the most recent tick-up in inflation.
And so we now get to the first sign of panic from this government. Oh no, our big spending isn't causing inflation to rise, but the Prime Minister then ordering Chalmers and his other ministers find lots of savings, cut billions, no more spending on things that are just nice to have, said one minister. Well, it's all a bit too late, isn't it? And who believes this government can cut? But I mentioned Pauline Hanson, but she's also making Labor worried. And no wonder. You just look at today's Sky News Pulse poll. Look at these figures. Most attention is on the fact that One Nation is still ahead of the coalition, even after the Liberals got themselves a new leader, Angus Taylor. And he has lifted the coalition vote a bit. That's still at a terrible low. But look at the Labor vote. Never since our first election back in 1901 has Labor had a primary vote in an election as low as that, 29%. And that's when this government has had for months and months and months an opposition hopelessly divided. Still, 29%.
Picture this, a government so rattled it sends its own multiculturalism minister out to publicly agree with the very movement that is eating its lunch. That is not satire. That is Tuesday in Canberra right now. Quick favour before we continue, if you are loving this, smash that subscribe button right now. Most viewers have not yet. It takes 1 second, but it helps this channel keep going. Thank you. Now, let us continue.
Blame not just the economy. You also got to blame One Nation. Now, this poll shows that 12% of Labor voters at the last election now back One Nation. Pauline Hanson is stealing Labor voters as well. And her support has a lot of upside. This poll today shows twice as many voters are seriously considering voting for her than vote for her now. And that brings me to Labor's second sign of panic. We've already seen the Prime Minister suddenly talking tough about the Islamic State women trying to come back with their children, even though his immigration minister seems to, meanwhile, have been secretly helping them return. Now that Pauline Hanson is campaigning so successfully, particularly among Labor's working class voters, so successful for tougher controls on Muslim immigration, Anthony Albanese makes out like, oh, he's right on board. Well, at least with keeping out just these Islamic State women, anyway.
I have nothing but contempt for these people. I have contempt for their parents who have put these children in that situation.
But even more telling is a speech to be given today by Julian Hill. Now, he is Albanese's multiculturalism boss, his Assistant Minister for Citizenship and Multicultural Affairs. Despite that, Hill tells his own side, the left, to stop sneering at Australians worried about the 3 M's: migration, Muslims and multiculturalism. He said many decent Australians have attended the Marches for Australia, which, you know, Pauline Hanson has addressed. He said they deserve to be listened to rather than dismissed. The economic concerns of frankly pissed off people or worries about integration are real. He also said worries about immigration were legitimate. What a huge change from the left shouting racist at those of us who've warned about all this for years. And Hill, underline, he's the multiculturalism czar of this government, also told the left to stop attacking our national symbols and be more patriotic, saying, controversially to some, I believe this means embracing Australia Day, for as long as there is no consensus to change the date, as a day to reflect, celebrate and be proud of our country and our complex history. Why on earth would we cede our flag, he says, cede our flag, our national day and institutions as propaganda for extremists and the hard right? Yeah, it still damns the left that Hill has to admit it's controversial to ask the left to be proud of their country and to fly the flag, just as Hanson has been doing for decades, flying it inside our parliament as well. So we talk a lot about Hanson, as how Hanson has made the Liberals wake up to themselves and talk about cutting immigration and promoting Australian values and all that. But the threat of Hanson is now, as you can see, also wiping the sneer off Labor's face, forcing it to at least talk tough on borders. Well, talk, you know, that's all it is, and to keep out Islamic radicals. And good heavens, there's even now talk of cutting spending. So how much in a panic must this Albanese government be in?
Here is problem number 1. The economy is squeezing everyday Australians like a lemon at a cocktail bar. Inflation is sitting at 3.5%, and yes, that is actually down from 3.8%, but do not pop the champagne yet because housing costs alone have climbed 5% in a single year, and electricity bills have spent much of this year running more than 30% hotter than normal. Economists across the spectrum, from former Treasurer Peter Costello to respected Labor elder Bill Kelty, are pointing fingers at the same culprit: government spending that has ballooned to levels not seen outside a pandemic. Treasurer Jim Chalmers insists this is not the government's fault. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister is quietly telling his own departments to go find savings. That is not confidence, that is damage control with the lights off. So, that is the economy. Now bolt the door, because here comes problem number 2, and it is even scarier for Labor: Pauline Hanson. One Nation is now polling ahead of the Coalition, which is a sentence nobody in Canberra thought they would be saying a few years ago. But here's the real gut punch for Labor. Around 12% of people who voted Labor in 2022 say they are now leaning toward One Nation. Labor's primary vote has slumped to its lowest point in the party's entire 124-year history. Working-class voters, the very people Labor was built to represent, are walking out the door over worries about about immigration, cost of living and cultural identity. And get this, twice as many voters are seriously considering One Nation as currently support them. That is not a ceiling, that is a launch pad. So, how is Labor responding to being squeezed from both sides? Picture a driver swerving to avoid one pothole and steering straight into another. Assistant Minister Julian Hill stood up and told his own side to stop dismissing mainstream concerns about migration and multiculturalism as fringe nonsense. He defended the Australian flag, he backed Australia Day. He said the worries people have are real and legitimate. Think about that for a second. A Labor minister essentially borrowing Pauline Hanson's talking points to try and win back Labor voters. That is not policy, that is political CPR. And that is the real story here. This is not just about one party or one poll. It shows that when populist pressure builds high enough, even a centre-left government will pivot toward talk of borders, scarcity and national identity. Not because they suddenly believe it, but because survival demands it. Politics, like nature, abhors a vacuum, and right now, Pauline Hanson is filling one that Labor left wide open. Thank you for watching. Your thoughts and opinions are much welcome in the comments below. Just try to keep it respectful. I'll see you in the next one.